An investigation by the Associated Press claims an abuse helpline used by lay leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was used to cover up a case of sexual abuse.
This undercover sting started in July of last year. Detectives said they posed as underage children and prostitutes in order to catch these people. 51-year-old David Moss, former lieutenant for St. George Police and a bishop with the Mormon Church, and 29-year-old Richard Martin are both facing some serious felony charges right now. Authorities say these men are 2 of 40 people.
That is not even a drop of bucket.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the NY Patriot Show again. And if this is your first time coming across the channel, hit that like and subscribe button. I'm sure if you chose to watch this episode or listen to it, you would definitely like the rest of the stuff that is on my channel, on my podcast, all the other topics that I cover, and the amazing guests that I have had on. Today, I have joining me my amazing Canadian co-host, Teresa from Spiritual Gangsters podcast. I've heard joining me. What's up, Teresa? Thank you very much for jumping on and finishing this topic with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a wild and fun investigation process.
Oh, for sure. It's very interesting. Very juicy.
Yes.
And in case people don't know who you are by now, and I will say going forward, you will know who she is because I'm going to be covering a lot more topics with her instead of guests. Not saying I won't have guests on, but I'm going to be splitting it up more. So you're going to see her and you're going to know who she is eventually if you keep watching this show. So, Teresa, after I'm done with all that, would you like to plug the podcast that you have and the show that you have?
Yeah, so thank you because I have so much fun on your show. And then we also have a very different show together called The Spiritual Gangsters. So that's on, all the major podcast platforms and YouTube. Where we just basically talk with like really interesting people who've gone through like major shit in their life, faith stories, transformation, stuff like that. So it's a bit of a break from heavy conspiracy, occult, and whatnot. Yeah. But it's really fun and
I love it.
Yeah, and not necessarily lighthearted because sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. Yeah, it's just to connect people and make people feel a little bit less alone in like what they're going through and stuff.
Yes, for sure. It's it may not always be lighthearted, but it's definitely it's stories of what made people the way they are today, and I find it very
it's real shit, gangster shit.
Sure. Yeah, and I truly enjoy it. I look forward to when we do your show.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yes, definitely. So as you can see, this is part 2 to the Mormon series that we were doing. I know I have covered the Mormons before, even though it wasn't meant to be. When we covered Skinwalker Ranch, we had no plans of going into Mormons, and it just worked out that way. And I definitely found like tons of stuff to do with that we just didn't want to drag out in the Skinwalker series. So we're covering it now on this. I do also want to say real quick that this is stuff taken from the news. This is just our commentary. This is how we see things. This is our opinion on what is shown to us in the world around us when it comes to this topic. So, this is just commentary. This is our opinions. And I'm not making money off of the news that we're showing.
Right, exactly.
To make that disclaimer real quick.
Yes.
With all that said, I guess we will go into this news video I wanted to use.
Nice.
Here we go.
Our big story tonight at 6, the Mormon Church now a part of several lawsuits involving the scandals surrounding the Boy Scouts of America. I'm Tram Mai.
And I'm Joe Dana. Mark and Karime both have the night off. The LDS Church has been hit with several lawsuits for allegedly covering up decades of sexual abuse among Boy Scout troops in Arizona.
This marks the latest legal action before the state's end-of-year deadline for adult victims to sue the Scouts.
Team 12's Josh Sanders has been following the claims and has more for us tonight. Josh?
Yes, 7 cases filed against the Mormon Church for what lawyers claim was a systematic failure to keep Boy Scouts safe. In these cases, part of hundreds expected to be filed against the Scouts in Arizona for decades of alleged abuse.
They want some acknowledgement of what happened to them.
Evan Smola represents 7 men claiming their Boy Scout leaders in Arizona sexually abused them between 1972 and 2009. At the time, the victims' ages ranging from 9 to 15.
They want the ability to get their lives back on track.
But these lawsuits also claim the Mormon Church is responsible.
The liability against the LDS Church arises from their sponsorship of troops in Arizona.
In Arizona, there are 6 LDS temples representing more than 436,000 members, the church sponsoring at least 7 troops. The lawsuits claim church leadership never notified authorities of abuse allegations and instead would conduct its own investigation while letting accused scout leaders continue to be around kids.
The church itself is kind of the eyes and ears on the ground in scouting, and it is their responsibility to vet adult leaders.
In a statement to 12 News, LDS officials say in part the church has zero tolerance for abuse of any kind, and they claims the church had access to scout and eligible volunteer files is simply false. The latest round of lawsuits coming a week after more than a dozen were filed in Arizona. One of those alleged victims, Donald Kalmus.
They didn't protect us. You know, they didn't do what they were supposed to do to ensure our safety.
His lawyer, Michael Fowl, calling this a systemic problem.
BSA and their sponsoring organizations and local council cannot blame this on a few bad apples. There's just simply too many victims and too many tragic stories.
In Phoenix, Josh Sanders, 12 News.
Yeah. So, the Boy Scouts and the Mormons. Instead of just, I figured I'd show the video instead of showing news clips. But, so they have some stuff to do with the Boy Scouts as well.
Definitely. It's weird. I never noticed the Boy Scout logo has the fleur-de-lis in it. I was like, oh, that's kind of weird.
And you know what I did find interesting? And I should have included it. But if you go look, people were to look up Brandon Fugel, who was also associated with Skinwalker Ranch, besides him being involved in some kind of sexual abuse, company that deals, helping people with sexual abuse. It's funny how the people involved with the religion that seems to be blamed for a lot of shit like that is helping. Mm-hmm. He also is associated with something to do with neither federal parks or Boy Scouts. But whatever he's involved in is also like overseas the Boy Scouts. So I was just like, this is very interesting. If there's something there, I don't know. I could be wrong, but I'm almost possible that he is associated with something that kind of is, has to do with overseeing the Boy Scouts.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize the Mormon level of involvement with Boy Scouts, actually.
Yeah, and Brandon Fugel has recently, on the New York Post Skinwalker series that they kind of have, I think it's a 3 or 4-parter, he finally came out and admitted that he was Mormon. Yeah, even though I've already, made comments on his shit and he pretty much denied it. Now on Twitter, I busted his balls and he's even remarked and answered back to it. Now all of a sudden he's admitting he's a Mormon.
Well, it's like, why hide that, Like, why are you ashamed of that if there's nothing to hide?
Yeah, and then as he's being interviewed, there's Masonic and occult books behind him, too, on his
of course.
bookshelf. Of course.
Gotta show you who they are,
Yeah. So, I just wanted to pull that up, show that, they have had problems with the Boy Scouts as well. What a surprise. Mm-hmm. So, and then we'll move on to a few other news articles that I came across that I think is very interesting. And it's just like, damn, like, you don't hear about this shit. It's funny how it makes, like, the news online, but it doesn't make it on the TV.
Mm-hmm. It's funny how that is also. Indeed.
Well, I think they also know on the phones or whatever on the internet, I think, like, people just kind of, like, have less... They pay attention less. I think there's so much scrolling and shit. Like, maybe that's part of the reason.
Gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have child marriages, rape, and incest performed in Utah polygamous group lawsuit alleges. Utah polygamous group arranged marriages between cousins and other close relatives.
Shit.
Fuck. Women who were members of Utah polygamous group said in the lawsuit that they were forced into underage marriages in which their husbands raped them and they had to perform child labor in the group's business.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. Like does that mean like you're giving like birth to like your kid in like the back room of a business or something? Like I don't.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're not going
No,
to the
child
hospital.
labor. Like, were the people getting married like underage?
Mm.
Is that what that
Oh, you know
means?
what? I mean, technically, I wonder if that's even going into. I didn't even think about that. Shows you how ignorant I could be.
It's okay. That's why you have
Um,
me.
yeah, right. I mean, I could see, and I have seen it in other cults, just like the Fellowship of Friends. They do use children sometimes to like build their churches and all their shit. So I'm wondering if it even has something to do with that.
Yeah, I think in last time, when the first part of what we covered, we touched on like how polygamous leaders can kind of be like building their own like little crew.
Yes.
You know, like they build this incestuous family with multiple wives, and then it's like they have their own gang.
Yeah, if you got like 20 kids, I mean, and they start to become like, in their teens or, able to carry stuff and swing a hammer, you probably got free labor at that point too.
That's it,
Yeah. So the northern Utah-based Kingston group, also known as the Order, arranged such marriages so that girls would become pregnant and beholden to their husbands and the group, alleges the lawsuit filed Wednesday in state court in Salt Lake City. Oh, let me see when this is from. This is September 12th, 2022. It's not too old.
Recent.
Yeah. Order girls are taught from birth that their primary purposes in life are to be obedient, a submissive wife, and to bear as many children as possible, the lawsuit states.
Yeah.
Fuck, right? The lawsuit filed by 10 people against Kingston group members, including leader Paul Eldon Kingston, seeks a jury trial and unspecified damages. The group sought to maintain pure Kingston blood by arranging marriages between cousins and other close relatives and shunning relationships that weren't between white people, the lawsuit alleges.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, we have stated before, and I'm not saying, and I don't think it is all Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a thing with that where I don't think they even allowed black people in until a certain time.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying that is, that's probably a very small number of Mormons. And I'm sure when that rule was going on, there was fucked up people at the top who came up with that idea.
Well, it's very Targaryen. Like keep the bloodline pure kind of thing.
Yeah. The lawsuit describes a patriarchal group and a doctrine known as the law of one above another. Now, I don't know if there's any coincidence or correlation between the both, but there is a thing called the Ra's law of one, and of course that was another channeling. And that's almost kind of become a cult in itself, people believing in that stuff. So I don't know if there was anything along the lines of that, or is it just totally different, but who knows. So yeah, it was known as the law of one above another, in which everyone has a rank in the group's hierarchy. Women and girls, after they're married, submit to their husbands, and men answer to higher-ranked men. Men rise in prominence by being obedient and pure of blood and by having large families that can produce a lot of money and workers for the group, according to the lawsuit. Women gain status by being pure of blood and obedient, becoming the first wives of high-ranking numbered men and bearing many children, the lawsuit alleges. But women who are disobedient and fail to bear children, including because they miscarry, face ostracism and lawsuit. The lawsuit alleges.
Wow.
It's almost very Handmaid's Tale type of.
Very. Almost sounds like a multi-level marketing scheme, like MLM. It's like, okay, so you're ranked under this person, and because you made more money, you get to rise up. Oh my God, honestly.
Yeah, right?
Makes me wonder if a lot of MLM owners are Mormon. I wouldn't be surprised. Another show.
Yeah. And those things are total scams too. I actually had he was a coworker of mine. I would say he was also a friend too, besides a coworker. And he was like a supervisor. We were very close, and he did invite me to. He was trying to tell me that he had this thing going where he was making all this money and that he thought he was gonna fucking be able to retire in a few years. And he's like, oh, you got to come check this shit out. And, like, you know, I meet up with him and go to, like, this fucking, like, I think it was a hotel. And, like, this, you know, they rented out, like, one of those big rooms that they do that stuff in.
Conference
Oh,
room?
yeah, all fancy, huge, really nice place. I get there and I'm like, yo, this is one of them pyramid schemes.
Yeah.
I'm like,
no
like,
shade.
Frank,
I have friends
Frank.
who make legit money in MLM. So, like, good for you guys. But, you know, they do have a bad rap for a reason.
But I was like, no, they got you, bro. You fell for this? But I never asked, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. Some of them are pretty cheesy.
But, I mean, you really have to be good at lying and manipulating, I think, to get people involved with that.
Yeah, some of them for sure.
Yeah. All right, so let me keep going. It is a common and intentional practice in the order to acquire... I'm making sure I didn't read this right. Yeah. It is a common and intentional practice in the order to require girls and women to submit sexually to their husbands, even if the sexual submission is against their will, because having children results in workers for the benefit of the order, the lawsuit states.
What? So it's okay to rape your wife, basically.
Oh. Yeah, I guess so. Or the handmaid.
If it's for the benefit of the group.
Yo, for real, like, even the way, like, this thinking, you will see used in Handmaid's Tale as how they justify that they're treating people like this. Like, oh, well, you're having kids. You don't realize what you're doing for God and humanity. It's like, no, we're being raped to make these kids.
Yeah, exactly. Don't think that's what God had in mind.
Yeah, right?
Right? Just a theory. But.
Yeah. Yeah. And where did, like, you know, treat people as you want to be treated? Like, how does that fit in there with that whole thing?
Isn't that the golden rule?
Like, like,
the commandment of all commandments.
How do you fit that in and make sense of that? I don't know.
Yeah.
5 of the women suing alleged they were coerced into marriage as juveniles and raped by their husbands. 3 others, including Amanda Grant, who alleges that she endured years of sexual abuse by a half-brother as a child, said they fled to escape such a fate. Grant would later appear on the television series Escaping Polygamy. The Associated Press generally does not name people who say they have been sexually assaulted unless they come forward publicly. Also suing is a young child. The lawsuit said the child was raped by his or her father, who allegedly raped the mother. The lone man suing said 3 older men raped him when he was 16 or 17, and that when he left the group and announced he was gay, was tracked down and severely beaten by a group of boys acting at the direction of the order, the lawsuit says.
Ooh.
Fuck, yeah.
Wild.
Got a little
that is
fucking,
wild shit.
That's like they have like a little group of those kids from, what the fuck was that movie? Hostel. You ever see The Hostels? Movie Hostel? Oh, there's like these fucking group of kids that like... Yeah, they like throw rocks and kill people and terrorize people as they're like chewing gum and candy and taffy. Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's like little cronies. That's fucking wild.
A little crew of hitmen.
Yeah, fuck. So and here's another one. We got Fox News. This is September 9th, 2022. So I mean this isn't like just a few days before the last one actually. Former Utah City Mayor and Mormon bishop arrested for sexually abusing children. Investigators estimate former Mayor Carl Matthew Johnson abused 6 victims as young as 2 years old.
Oh, come on.
How come we're not hearing this shit on the radio?
Yeah.
A former Utah City mayor and bishop with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been arrested on accusation he sexually abused at least 3 children decades ago. Carl Matthews, 77, was arrested Wednesday and booked into the Davis County Jail in northern Utah on suspicion of 7 counts of sexual abuse of a child, according to a probable cause statement. Investigators say Johnson acknowledged abusing 3 victims in 1985, 1993, and 1996, and estimated there was a total of 6 victims as young as 2 years old, according to the document. He told investigators he had struggled controlling his sexual urges most of his life. So, I mean, from this, it actually sounds like this guy's not even denying it either.
No. Well, once he got caught, no.
Yeah, I guess
right?
so. He's not like the rest of them who, make up all these bullshit excuses. He's actually admitting he's a sick fuck. Well, in my opinion, he's a sick fuck. The investigation is still going on, but so far, Johnson is only booked on charges stemming from 3 victims. Johnson had not yet been charged as of Thursday afternoon, and it was unknown if he had an attorney. See, I don't even understand that, though. You arrested him, but he hasn't been charged.
Right. Yeah, then what grounds is he under arrest?
Yeah, and you can only hold him for so long anyway.
Right.
Johnson was in a position of trust over each victim, but the probable cause statement doesn't say what years Johnson was a church bishop or if the alleged abuse occurred while Johnson was in that role. Bishops are lay clergy who oversee local congregations for a few years at a time in a rotating role reserved only for men in the faith, knowingly widely as the Mormon Church. Stephanie Dinsmore, spokesperson for Davis County Sheriff's Office, declined to say if the alleged abuse happened when Johnson was a church bishop, saying in a text that the agency will not be commenting on Johnson's affiliation with the church. Johnson's other leadership role was mayor of West Bountiful from 1990 to 1997, a city just outside of Salt Lake City. Very huge area for the Mormons and the LDS.
The hot spot.
Oh, for sure, yeah. The victims told investigators they were told not to tell anyone, and Johnson used his position to suppress disclosures according to the probable cause statement.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah, seems to be a common theme, right? Like people in positions of power.
Yeah, well,
abusing their power.
Unfortunately, and this is just my opinion and maybe how these things kind of need to get swept under the rug. You don't hear much about them. Or maybe why stuff kind of like never happens is that, I mean, even if you were to just look at how many Mormons are in Utah, I know a lot of times people will even use this as an excuse to discredit what's going on. They're like, well, there's so many Mormons there. What do you expect? But like seeing how many are there and then looking into politics and seeing how many of these people that are in position, or Mormons too, when the district attorney or the attorney general, when the mayor and the governor, when all these people are Mormons, I don't think it's a grasp to think or a stretch to think, in my opinion, that maybe this is a cover-up or they could cover
absolutely, or it's like they put these people in positions of power to uphold their status, like, and get away with things, right? It's almost like, in the TV show Yellowstone, how like
I was watching that last night.
Were you watching it?
Yeah,
I know the season started. I haven't watched it yet, but I want to. But how the Dutton family, they put themselves in positions like governor, mayor, whatever, so that they can sweep things under the rug that look unfavorable on them, right? And that's how they maintain their ranch, their power, their wealth, right?
That's exactly how it's done. Watch that show and you'll be able to know how to become a living god. Very right, very right. Yes. All right, so we'll get back to this one now. Utah ritualized sexual abuse investigations. Is there a history of ritual abuse in Utah? As the Utah, and this is from June 24th, 2022. As the Utah primary draws near, the investigation into ritualized child sexual abuse has garnered more than 120 tips related to claims of ritualistic sex rings. Let's examine the history of the allegations in Utah. In nearly 4 weeks since the Utah County Sheriff's Office announced an investigation into allegations of ritualized child sexual abuse in 3 Utah counties, they have received more than 120 tips in the form of phone calls, texts, and emails. USCO Public Information Officer Sergeant Spencer Cannon told the Salt Lake Tribune that the office has pulled in sergeants with experience in sexual assault cases to help review the information. The Last American Vagabond has been following the unusual situation since May 31st, when the Utah County Sheriff's Office announced they were working with multiple county and federal agencies investigating reports of ritualistic sexual abuse from as far back as 1990. The Sheriff's Office said the investigation began in April 2021. The investigation subsequently discovered previous reports alleging similar forms of ritual sexual abuse and trafficking that occurred in Utah County, Webb County, and I could be saying this wrong, San Pete County, during the time of 1990 and 2010. The 1990s and ritualized sexual abuse. In March 1990, the Utah Governor's Commission for Women and Families created the Utah Task Force on Ritual Abuse to investigate a rise in claims of ritualized sexual abuse of children and educate the public and professionals about the issue. The task force was co-chaired by psychologist Naomi Mattis, PhD, who was a believer in the idea that alleged victims can recover their memories of abuse over time. So the main thing I wanted to get into with this article, just skip that page, they got into the Zion Society cult, which I have actually never heard of, and that was new for me, looking into this stuff. One of the investigators hired by the Utah County General's Office was Mike King. However, to his role in the AG investigation, King cut his teeth tracking down the Zion Society's cult. King cut his teeth. I guess that's like a saying that I don't understand what it means.
Yeah, it means like you
bit into too much, maybe.
It's like you made it. Like that's your debut thing. Like you cut your teeth.
Oh, you made it big. That's you made it big with
now
this
it's
one.
like you're legit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In 1990,
I think.
Nice. All right. At least it makes sense now. In 1991, Arvin Shreve of Ogden, Utah, and 10 members of the Zion Society were arrested as a part of a sex ring involved in ritualistic sexual abuse. At the time, Mike King was working as an investigator for the Weber County Attorney's Office. King was approached by a woman who claimed she had been involved in a cult that was sexually abusing children. The woman told King she was running away from a bad marriage when she became involved with the group's leader, a man named Irvin Shreve, who had developed a group of followers. Shreve told his followers he knew how to help them achieve happiness in the afterlife. His instructions involved lesbian relationships and sexual abuse.
Wow.
Fuck. I guess they teach that and stuff. He was then dictating that they should have relations with each other. A same-sex relationship, all in what he believed was his God's approval. So he thought this stuff was all right. Mike King said in an interview with the Cold podcast, it continued to pervert. As always, it seems these sexual predations, whatever, do. And it soon became now the children need to be involved. King called the Zion Society's abuse of children ritual abuse, despite it not being satanic or occult. He said the rituals Shreve employed were a perversion of Christian theology. Ritual abuse is happening. I don't believe ritual abuse means satanic abuse, King said. Which I do find to be interesting because, like, I do think, I mean, if there is a schedule or a certain way of that this is being done, if there's like even then going back to Handmaid's Tale, the guy has to go get the book. He has to read from the book. The woman has to hold the other woman. There has to be a person there. Even though they're not talking about Satan or anything like that, that is a ritualistic scene. This is done, that's done, then this is done. That's a ritual. People who wake up in the morning and go brush their teeth right away, that is ritualistic.
Absolutely.
What I do think, I think it's interesting how at least this guy is realizing that even though it does not have to have all of these other things in, you are realizing it is part of like a kind of a ritualistic thing.
Absolutely. But also too, like what I would argue, like, you know, abuse of children or abuse of anyone is like, is a satanic undertone, whether you're like invoking that or not. It's definitely not right.
I agree for sure. Yes.
Whether you want to call it that or not, it's not from God.
It's satanic in general, but the thing is, I think like the people themselves may not think that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, so at least it still makes it ritualistic.
described to them in that way, so they don't associate it with that. Yeah.
It's like at least you realize you didn't need a pentagram to consider ritualistic.
Right, exactly, yes. Abuse comes in many forms,
Yes.
exactly.
When the Ogden police raided the neighborhood where the Zion Society was based, Mike King supervised the operation and the criminal prosecution of Shreve and any other members of the Zion Society. And I was like, well, I know the Mormons are big into Zion, and they use that word. So I looked up Zion with the Latter-day Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Within the Latter-day Saint movement, Zion is often used to connote or whatever an association of the righteous. This association would practice a form of communitarian economics called the United Order, meant to ensure that all members maintain an acceptable quality of life, class distinctions were minimized, and group unity achieved. While Zion has often been linked with theocracy, the concept of Zion did not theoretically require such a governmental system in this way. Zion must be distinguished from the ideal political system called theodemocracy, which Latter-day Saints believed would be adopted upon Christ's second coming. However, Zion maintains several possible meanings within the Latter-day Saint lexicon.
Almost sounds like communism.
Yeah. It also makes you wonder, like, how deep of a meaning does Zion have in the Matrix movies, too? Or that word, does that, like, show, like, I don't think people quite understand what Zion really is. And then I also think it has many different reasons. I'm even including myself. I don't think I totally can even grasp, like, a lot of the Zion stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Even in reggae music, they refer to it a lot, right? Like Bob Marley used to talk about it. And
a lot of different people from different beliefs will have mentioned or believe in, like, a Zion for, like, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Like a promised land kind of thing. Yeah.
So, Arvin Shreve and the Zion Cult, 1991. Arvin Shreve was a lifetime resident of Weber County and was employed as a landscaper for Ogden City. He has been excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for advocating practices not consistent with the church teachings. Shreve began a cult called The Company that recruited mostly excommunicated LDS members. So it's like, of course, once they get caught, it's always once they get caught, we excommunicate them.
Yeah.
Like, it's never even like, all right, we excommunicated the guy, we kept our lips sealed, we didn't put him on blast, and now he gets busted. It's never like that either.
No.
It's always after the fact. Like,
it's only when it causes problems for the church reputation.
Like, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
It's not even, because, at least you'd have somewhat of a leg to stand on. Like, if you at least excommunicated the guy prior and you're like, oh, well, we thought, even still lying, but we thought he might have been a little fishy, so we got rid of him. At least that would still look better than, like, oh, we waited until he got caught.
It would look so much better.
Like, fuck. At least you can really play stupid that way.
Well, we can't hide it anymore, so now we'll excommunicate you. Yeah.
Fuck, disassociate yourself beforehand. Fuck.
Right.
Polygamous sect leader dies in state prison. Arvin Shreve, he led the Zion Society and was convicted of abusing a child. The Salt Lake Tribune, August 12, 2009, by Lindsay Whitehurst. Down here it says, Shreve was the leader of the Zion Society, a cult whose religious teachings included group and lesbian sex instructions. At its height, the cult claimed about 70 followers. Now, the thing is, when they consider, like, followers, are those the grown-ups and the kids, or is that just the grown-ups? Like, could it have been 70 followers, but then, like, if you're pumping out kids like crazy, is that, like, 100 kids?
Right, yeah, it's not clear.
Oh, no, and it says with about half, see, my bad, I should have just kept going, with about half of them children of the Sisters of the Zion Society. He told his followers the world would soon be in chaos, but they would be saved. Prosecutors said at least 10 children were molested by Shreve and his followers, 10 of whom were later charged with child sex abuse. Police raided the group's headquarters in 1991. They found guns, survival gear, hidden rooms, and bomb shelters stashed in a meticulous, neat enclave of the home in northern Ogden. Well, fuckers with some doomsday people up in here.
They're preppers.
Yeah.
Fuck.
It was just like a fucking. They were trying to start a Waco.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh, I wonder if they had the band too, like that guy had.
What the what?
He had a band. That guy. Yeah. If you go look him up. He's got like music you could probably find on YouTube.
Oh really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I only knew that because I watched the Netflix series and it showed that like the guy was like fucking jamming out. I think like doing band practice when the when the fucking the cops are at his at the place.
Oh my god.
Oh man. A report of child sexual abuse in the LDS neighborhoods by Marion B. Smith in March 2004. I pulled this one up. I'm going to read this part, but it's really in the next page that I found interesting. In order to protect those who were child victims at the time of the events in the following narrative, all children's names are pseudonyms except those already identified in court records. The names of alleged teenage perpetrators and of our daughters are also pseudonyms. Otherwise, all names, locations, and dates are as accurate as our recollections and records permit. The president of the LDS Church, Gordon B. Hinckley, was asked by Mike Wallace in a national television interview in April of 1996 if abuse was a critical issue in the LDS community and if the patriarchal system discriminated against women and child victims. President Hinckley's response was that there was a blip here and a blip there. Okay. But nothing of major consequence. The following count is of one of these blips, which occurred in our family in our Mormon neighborhood and ward. Since our experience, we have become aware of many cases of child abuse involving priesthood holders of responsible positions in the LDS Church. In 2004, the Catholic Church in the United States acknowledged 10,667 claims of abuse perpetrated by clergy since 1950, which has cost the church $533,400,000 in settlements. That was really the thing that I just wanted to get at with all that shit that I read. $500 fucking million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money you're paying out because you can't stop. I mean, there's a fucking problem. If it's costing you that much because of the claims like this.
Well, this is the Catholic priests.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Which, just to say, I find it interesting how the Catholic priests, yes, there is a problem with some of them for sure, but that's very much publicized in the media. Whereas like this is not really. Yeah. We can find stuff on it if we look, but like, do you recall ever hearing stuff about Mormon abuse just like in the news, like on NBC or like 60 Minutes or like, I don't really, I just find that interesting. One group gets publicly lynched more than another.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's very true.
Not defending that.
No,
but,
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
I just find it interesting.
Well, this one's a little bit older, from 2006. The latest, women suing Mormon church speaks of alleged rape. Woman suing the Mormon church, alleging she was raped by a former Mormon leader in the 1980s, says she's seeking justice and wants the church to change how it handles sexual abuse reporting. McKenna Denson said Thursday at a news conference in Salt Lake City that she was singled out, groomed, and raped in 1984 by Joseph L. Bishop at the Religion's Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah. 55-year-old Denson says she decided to sue after her numerous reports of the abuse to local church officials never led to any discipline. In the lawsuit filed Wednesday, the woman repeats her allegation that Joseph L. Bishop sexually assaulted her in 1984 when he was president of the Religion's Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints spokesman Eric Hawkins said Thursday that the religion has faith in the judicial system but takes seriously its responsibility to hold members accountable. This woman plans to speak Thursday at a news conference. So there's that one. Then we have another one. I found this interesting. This is a little bit of an older one. I found it interesting for a few reasons, and then I think this might be my last one. I will shut up and then let Teresa go after I'm done with all this.
No, it's fine.
But this one, why I thought it was interesting. One, because when we covered the Skinwalker series, when I pulled up and showed that Brandon Fugel used to, well, now he admits that he's a Mormon. When he was a Mormon, I did find pictures of him and Dragon from the Skinwalker show also. There were missionaries, pictures of them being missionaries to Hawaii for the Mormons. And Fugel is, if you were to go and probably check his Twitter and or whatever social media he has, he's making it very, he's pretty outspoken about the amounts of property he is sucking up and buying in Hawaii right now as well. So I found that just to be, kind of interesting and coincidental. There has been times where I think when we covered the Order of Quetzalcoatl, the Shriners, we did mention Hawaii. I think it might have been on a, the story goes, I think when the Shriners were coming back from Hawaii for something that they did, they were on a boat ride back, or however they were coming back, they came up with the idea of the Order of Quetzalcoatl. So again, there is something to Hawaii. And I do believe pineapple is used for a few reasons. It can be like the lotus on top of your head, or it can be pedophilia symbol as well. So I just thought for many reasons, just the name of this topic was rather interesting.
Pineapple Express.
Yeah. 2 men file lawsuit against Mormon church alleging sexual abuse as teens by church leader on Pineapple Farm in Hawaii. This again is January 24th, 2014. 2 men filed a civil lawsuit on Wednesday suing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for sexual abuse that the plaintiffs claim occurred on a pineapple farm in Maui, Hawaii from 1986 through 1988. Jacob Huggard, 41, and Kyle Spray, 42, both of Utah, are alleging they were sexually abused by the camp's coordinator. Brian Pickett was responsible with overseeing the hundreds of teenage boys from Utah and Idaho who worked with the pineapple fields in the 1970s and 1980s. In addition to the Mormon Church, Maui Land and Pineapple Co., which owned the farmland and camp housing, is also listed as defendant according to a press release. Both companies recruited boys to work for the company, paying them for their work while also educating them in Mormon missionary lifestyle. The lawsuit claims that abuse happened both at the farm and later at Pickett's private residence when he was promoted to vice president of the operations. It also alleges that Pickett's higher-ups were aware of his actions, but did nothing to prevent the abuse from continuing. Despite having knowledge of the pedophilic sexual violence perpetrated by the defendant, Pickett, these other defendants did not report him to the authorities or take any action to protect plaintiffs from further molestation, which did occur, the lawsuit states. There were hundreds of boys over more than a decade cycled through these camps, attorney Randall Rosenberg said at the press release. Hundreds were exposed to alleged sexual predator in our case. We did not know how many others may have been molested, but our experience is that child sexual predators with access to kids have multiple victims. Oh, shit. And I guess I have one more. Sorry, I thought that was my last one.
It's okay.
Former LDS church bishop pleads guilty to abusing boys in his ward. This is August 25th, 2017. Former LDS church bishop pleads guilty to abusing boys in his ward. Eric Wayne Hughes, 51 of Mapleton, pleaded guilty Wednesday in the 4th District Court to 2 counts of forcible sexual abuse, a 2nd-degree felony, and tampering with a witness, a 3rd-degree felony. Was he trying to strong on him? Yeah. Hughes was charged with abusing 2 boys starting when the boys were 15 and 17. The abuse happened several years ago. Both were members of Hughes's LDS ward and are now adults. The investigation began in April when one of the men, who had since moved out of state, disclosed to a counselor he was sexually abused by his bishop, according to a search warrant. In June, after Hughes learned the first victim was talking to the police, he told the second one not to say anything of question, according to the charging documents. Both also claimed that Hughes may have drugged them by giving them a pill to relax. They reported waking up to find Hughes abusing them, according to a police affidavit filed in the 4th District Court. Hughes was not charged with anything in relation to the alleged druggings. And then Darren Scott, former Mormon high priest, jailed for sexually abusing 11 boys. This is, I think, might be the same guy. This is October of 2017, Friday the 27th. Was that the same person's name?
No, I think the other guy's name was Hughes.
Yeah, Hughes, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a totally different one. Jailed for sexually abusing 11 boys. Oof. A judge has jailed a man for 10 years over child sexual abuse in Victoria's East, describing him as a sexual predator who showed no remorse. Darren Scott of Arkeys Creek will spend at least 7 years behind bars after he pleaded guilty to 16 charges. 16 charges relating to child sex abuse, and that equates to 7 years?
That's crazy.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it is really fucked up.
Scott, now 33, worked as a film director, actor, and as a freelance cameraman for WIN News. He started grooming his victims in the early 1990s as a junior football coach in Melbourne eastern suburbs. The county court in Morwell heard he piled the boys. He basically gave them pills. So he plied the boys, maybe they're pilled, whatever, the boys with sleeping pills, cannabis, alcohol, and pornography. Jesus Christ. He also indecently assaulted several victims on surfing trips and at his home near Wathagi on Victoria's Bass Coast. In sentencing, Judge John Smallwood told Scott he had ruined lives and hadn't shown any remorse other than self-pity. Well, then I think if that's the case, he deserves more than 7 years, but that's just my...
Absolutely. Not remorseful whatsoever.
It's a long way from the remorse anticipated from a man who has done the damage that you have, he told Scott. And then, we'll just leave it there. That's fine. So, yeah, that's all.
Wild.
Yeah, I mean, there was even more stuff I could have dragged up, but, yeah, that was just...
for sure. Yeah, it's pretty endless when you start looking it up, right?
Yeah. There is a consistent thing going on with this group of people that you just don't seem to really hear much about at all.
Very secretive, very mysterious. Yes. Yeah, it seems to be. And like I found even some people on social media who have pages, dedicated to kind of exposing Mormon abuse and whatnot. And I mean, we could go on and on with their stories, right? Their individual stories. But a common theme seems to be, especially for like the young women who were abused, like when they would go to their superiors, like their bishop, for example, and try to like make a formal complaint, they would just be told like, well, you have to trust God and just pray on it. Very much like gaslighting them into being like, it's never about the abuser. It's like about you, like it's your fault somehow. Or like you just have to trust that God's going to handle it for you. Like this kind of mentality. It's very, very messed up, and there doesn't seem to be much consequences for the
They
abusers.
downplay it very much.
They downplay it, yeah, absolutely. Even just from what you brought up right now and in our previous episode, it seems there would be a lot more than 10,000 and change complaints.
Yeah.
If you were to add them all up, like, I don't know, it's pretty wild.
Did you ever see Midnight Mass?
I have not.
All right. Well, for like listeners, like people listening and watching, it like reminds me very much of like when that priest, started doing crazy shit. It's like the chick in that movie who was very religious, just because I think of the fact of that how things need to appear and worrying about people thinking bad stuff. Was like kind of just was like sweeping it under the rug and justifying it. And it's like, no, we just got to, get him dressed. Who cares? Get rid of the dead body. Get him out there on his fucking altar and say something really good for the people. Like, that's all she was. And it's just like,
keep
exactly
up appearances.
That's exactly how, like, I think these people just get caught up in that and, like, somehow justify fucked up sick shit and just, like, ignore it. Whatever.
Well, I think it's one of those things.
We
like
can't tarnish the name.
If you were to really acknowledge it, it would make you have to question like the whole system. right?
You have to question your own belief system that you bought into.
Absolutely. Or let's say you were like an employee or like highly involved in like the church, and this happened with one of your bishops or something. It's like you trusted this person with like your beliefs, your tithing money, like all this stuff. And it's like, wow, were they really a dirtbag the whole time or worse?
Yeah.
Right? And even interesting, like just a personal story. Over the weekend, my son was talking with a priest, and I was there, whatever. And this particular priest, he's in his 80s. He used to run a camp like for kids, like up north in Ontario. And they had to shut it down. Like they don't do that anymore because of like all the pedophile accusations, because people stopped signing their kids up. So he's like, we don't do those anymore. And I said, why? And he told me why. And I was like, oh, really? And I was like, wow. He's like, yeah, but it's funny because then people who did attend the camp and had a great experience, like none of that stuff actually happened there. It's just that people have this perception that it happens everywhere. So he's like, some of the parents from 35 years ago have been calling him like, hey, can I sign my kid up for one of your programs? And he's like, no, because we can't have them anymore because no one will sign up except people who actually experienced it themselves. Right. So it's unfortunate that well-meaning people get, caught up in tarnished reputation too. Right. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but I don't know. Mormons, definitely some crazy shit. So I ended up, well, actually you sent it to me, a video by a program called The Fifth Estate, which is a Canadian investigative journalism show through the CBC, no less, which is funny that the CBC would run this. But anyways, it's actually pretty recent. It aired at the end of October, and they did like an amazing job, not only diving into like, they didn't dive into the sexual stuff, but a whole lot of financial scandals with the Mormon church as well. So these guys are like, they got their hands in a lot of different things. So I'm just going to kind of summarize some important stuff from the video. It is on YouTube if people want to watch it. Maybe we can link it in the description after, in case they want to watch it themselves. But basically, it had some whistleblowers in it. And one of them was saying like, you'd think that the Mormon church is a religion that dabbles in business, but he's like, the evidence is clear that it's a business
that dabbles in religion.
Dabbles in religion, exactly. Yeah, so very much money oriented, right?
That's a fucking amazing way to put it.
Yeah,
that nails it right there. Yeah,
I had to write it down exactly because I was like, that's perfect the way.
I mean, that's really almost every religion. I hate to say it, unfortunately,
it does seem to be, when it gets at that highly organized level, right? Like you could say the same or worse about the Vatican or about, mega Christian churches, and I'm sure Islamic things too. It's crazy. It's in every power group. That's why I don't like to, point fingers at one or the other, because I just think it's in every group. Once they get to a certain level, power gets abused, period.
Once it gets out of cult status and moves into church status, no matter what religion it is, it becomes a business for sure.
Yeah. It's worse, I think, with religion or spirituality. Like it happens a lot in the yoga community too, like sexual things. It's very prevalent. It's because, you're taking advantage of people's belief system and they have so much trust in you, and it makes it way worse, I think, using God or, that kind of messaging for abusing people. It's fucked up. But one of the people who was a whistleblower, he's a Canadian. His name is Nigel Kennett. So he was a devout Mormon, and he actually became an accountant, like for his profession. So he was the one who initially reached out to the Fifth Estate, to this investigative journalism program, because he felt that the Mormon church is deceiving people with their financials. So I think he was an accountant for like another church, like not related to Mormonism, and doing like their books. And then he was seeing like how they handle their finances. And then he's like, wait a second. He's like, the Mormon like finances are like really fucked up in comparison. And that's why he reached out. So he couldn't like live with it on his conscience, So that's what he said. But basically the Mormon or Latter-day Saints church, they advertise that their tithing, which is their donations from their members, goes to like all these humanitarian and charitable efforts, which you would assume, right? You would assume that that's where money from collecting from a church beyond their own expenses to run their things goes to charitable efforts. You would assume so, right?
Yeah, yes.
To further Christ's work on earth. That's the guise that they tell their members, right? But actually tithing for them is different than in other churches. So in other churches, it's usually optional to donate if you want. You're not required. You can still go to church, in my experience anyway, and understanding of most other faiths. In the Mormon church, it is a requirement. It's a commandment that you must give at least 10% of your income to the church. A commandment. I was like, all right, bro. Yeah. So you're already guaranteed like a certain amount of income, right?
You get a better seat in heaven.
Apparently, yes. They teach their members that you should give your tithing before God and God will open the gates of heaven to you. That's what people are told. So it would be pretty bad if you didn't give your tithing, right? Even to the point that they were saying, one former Mormon in the video was saying that if you had to choose between eating, like if you were so poor that you couldn't eat or give your tithing, you should still give your tithing and let your bishop help you with your food.
Wow.
I was like, yo.
Why don't you just buy the food?
Right?
Someone's paying for it.
Yeah, he's collecting all the money, so might as well pay for it. I'm getting
you're gonna give him $10 and he'll give you back fucking $2 in ramen.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Right? I was like, wow, this is very. So they're very much indoctrinated from young. Like the whistleblower, Nigel Kennett. He was saying he's been giving his tithing since he was 8 years old.
See, I can understand to a point. I give people, cut them some slack. If you're born into this stuff, you're in your own little world, your own little community. Yeah. But how does somebody who exists outside of it get sucked into that?
That's what I wonder too. Some people who've converted later in life, how did you hear that and think that was all right?
Yeah.
Or legit. But I mean, I don't know. So they do claim, the Mormon Church claims that they have given $3.5 billion in humanitarian aid since 1985. That's their claim. Whether that's actually true or not is very debatable. So what he started to notice, this Nigel Kennett, he started to notice that there's no legitimate donees, in the Mormon Church in Canada's books. So there's no Red Cross, there's no Salvation Army, food banks, there's none of that. And he's like, so where is this money going?
I even know from just real quick when we covered the Stephen King, when we did that short series, when I started looking into his charitable stuff, you can, if the charity exists, you can go on GuideStar, make an account, and you can even pull up their records. And this is why I didn't go too far into his stuff, is because I did find that at least him, or whoever did the paperwork, is showing exactly where the money came from and where it went.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck. I was like, even if these are schemes, it's still kind of on paperwork wise legit. But I mean, I didn't cover and get into it because everything looked straight. But they are supposed to show who they're sending their money to.
Yeah. So
that's how
you're show all that.
Yeah, you have to.
Exactly. Yeah. So what he started to notice, that it's shady, that there's no charities you'd think would receive this humanitarian aid are not receiving anything. There is, however, a huge donee, which is BYU, Brigham Young University in the United States. So the Canadian Mormon Church has been giving over $100 million a year to Brigham Young University. Okay? This is really fucked up. Since 2007, he noticed that they started to move massive amounts of money down south to BYU. The highest year was 2016 when they donated $110 million. Damn. Okay. This is over 70% of all the Canadian tithing to one place in America.
Shit.
So that's not even going to
70% of the
Mormon
church money that they raised for that year went to the United States?
Yep.
That's fucking wild.
Yeah, without a peep from the government, nothing. Because apparently there is a Canadian tax loophole that states if the money is benefiting for educational purposes, even just one Canadian. So say at Brigham Young, I think it said 2% of the students are Canadian.
Oh, jeez.
So if 2% are Canadian down there, it benefits them so they can do it legally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Money laundering. Possibly,
yes,
maybe.
It's money laundering, absolutely. So in total, like the Canadian Church has given over $1 billion to BYU, which has cost the Canadian Treasury $280 million in tax breaks.
Wow.
Yeah, this is big business here. And also, too, the church will claim in official statements like, well, most of our Canadian Mormon tithing money goes to Canada. Most. So the stat, yeah, it is most because 46% has left the country, but most has still stayed here, like just over 50%.
I wonder.
So that's how they justify it. Mm-hmm.
I wonder, too, like, I think they do believe that they're going back to Missouri for their Zion. So I'm just wondering, like, is like the money, like, they're sending it from Canada to here for the people to trek up to here? Like, I don't know. It just seems like, your Zion, like, the Zion for them is technically closer to Canada than it is to BYU. So why are they saying, I don't know. I'm just, like, trying to wonder, like, what the fuck's up with that?
Yeah, so another whistleblower featured in the Fifth Estate interview, his name is Lars Nielsen. So he's an American former Mormon. He went to BYU, and he also had graduated from Harvard with another degree.
Oh.
So his theory is that so much Canadian money is being funneled to the States because of the idea that Mormons want to create their Zion. So they obviously need money to do that. Mm-hmm. And they really want to physically bring the kingdom of heaven down to earth. And he's like, we believe that the promised land is America. Canada, obviously being close neighbors, is part of that, but not the actual promised land. So they can justify in their mind, bringing the money south to create that promised land in America.
Yeah, I was like thinking along those lines, actually.
Yeah, you were right on point. Exactly. So it's interesting. So what are they doing with all this money? Another guy who's featured in the interview, his name is Ryan McKnight. So he's American as well. He left the church because of racism and homophobia, and started the website Mormon Leaks, which I've been on.
Oh yeah, so have I.
When researching this.
Yeah,
Mormon Leaks. So I was like, oh, that's the guy. That's crazy. So
it's funny. You know what's wild when it's just like how when these things are probably screwed up and there's something behind it, like. Even with Mormons, and I even noticed with the Fellowship of Friends, which, real quick, I do want to mention, it's funny how we talked about, like, more business than church. When we covered the Fellowship of Friends, and if you look into that, the tax guy, I think it was like the tax guy, whoever of that cult, even said that the only reason they came up with that whole, their whole, like, command, like, their religious thing to go by was literally just for taxes.
Yeah.
Because they were claiming religious exemption, and then the IRS is like, well, where's your proof that you're a religion? And then they're like, oh, fuck, well, we got to hand them something, so here, take these rules. The guy, like, literally said, we made them up in my fucking office.
Yeah.
Just to get the tax breaks.
Just to get a tax break, exactly. It's crazy. So Ryan McKnight, the guy who started Mormon Leaks, he initially broke a story that the Mormon Church owed $32 billion in U.S. stock holdings through 13 random LLCs.
Wow.
So they're obviously trying to hide.
That's also been something that me and Lux have showed multiple times, like even with secret societies or when we're like showing people's names, like linked to lodges and linked to this, it's like you'll run that address or that person's name, and we come across like 10 or 20 like other companies
Yeah.
or LLCs that are linked to that name, and it's like every 2 months another one's coming up. And like when you pull up the address, and if you can actually physically see what it is, it's like a fucking house, or it's like something the size of like like Rite Aid would probably be twice the size of like a store. What I'm trying to think of, like something to where it's like there's no way there's 12 businesses in something that big
operating.
Or it's like there's each one like a fucking desk. Is it like what I'm saying? Like these things are shady. Something's up.
Very shady. Yeah, so he was the one that broke that story, which is pretty crazy. And they always say like they keep this secret because if the congregation at large knew, they would stop giving their tithing. They wouldn't want to give it, right? Because they're all under the guise that it's going for charitable works and for the good of society, but it's not. So Ryan McKnight's investigation then also led him to kind of wonder about their land holdings. So the Mormon Church's land holdings. And he connected with a Canadian Mormon, a former Mormon, named Josh Bigley in Prince Edward Island. So the two of them together spent 2 years creating this database of all the Mormons' holdings. And they found that the Mormon Church is for sure the single largest landowner in the United States.
Yep.
They're the biggest ones. I think you've said that before.
Yeah. I thought when I had came across some stuff, they said they were like in the top 5 or the 5th largest, but I mean it could.
They're the biggest.
I know in Florida they said by far they own the most land.
Yeah, so they own over 1.7 million acres and $15.8 billion of assets in their portfolio.
You know what I should have checked when I heard about that. I should look up to see who owns more, Bill Gates or the Mormon Church. Because people go on about, Bill Gates has all this property, and I'm like, have you ever heard what the Mormon Church owns?
Right, yeah.
It's fucking no difference.
Right. Yeah, so even in like 2021, as recent as that, the church is claiming that they've provided $900 million in aid worldwide. But if you compare it to like their massive fortune, it's actually like a very small percent of what they have, right? So then the investigative piece also goes into the Australian Mormon Church, which claims to give over 70% of their tithing to charity. But they're like 70 cents on a dollar doesn't make sense that all that money would be going to charity because like who's doing this? All volunteers? Like, don't you even have to have a paid staff?
Yeah, and that's normally a loophole that charities will use actually to make money. So we got to pay the people that are doing this for us because they understand.
People, they work not for profit, but it ends up being 30, 40 cents of every dollar you give actually goes to like the work, right? Yeah. Or less sometimes. Because there's administrative things, the cost of salaries.
Legit, like you have to, you just have to pay
run
people.
It.
Yes, exactly. Because not everybody has the time to do everything. So yes, there's exemptions to pay people actually.
Yeah, so they're like 70% doesn't make sense. Like just that number doesn't even make sense.
That's why I was so surprised by when you said that. I was like, damn, like that is a lot. Like normally it's like, well, only 20% of that. Like the March of Dimes, I think it's only 10%. You know what I'm saying?
That's why it's called March of Dimes, right?
Yeah, and so it's like, damn, like they actually really, like neither they're lying and playing money games or like they actually really sent all that, and that's fishy in itself. Because normally that's like a pile of money people rape and pillage before they do anything with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's weird in Australia too. The Mormon church membership is decreasing. Like less and less people are belonging to the church, yet magically the donations have increased from 200,000 a year now to 73 million a year. That's a 2,000% increase.
It's getting like Scientology now,
right? Very much so. Even some of the things they believe, it reminds me of that for real. So yeah, I think the only people who benefit from the Australian Mormon donations are Australian Mormons who are donating. That's what they've concluded. And basically they're like, okay, so is this like basically wide scale tax avoidance or illegal wide scale tax evasion? Right? Because it's all under the guise of charity and tax deductible and whatnot.
Exactly, yeah.
And then it begs the question, like, why is the Mormon Church sitting on all this money and assets? What are they sitting on it for? Like a rainy day? Like, how much money do you need for a rainy fucking day?
I would also think too, if you're tossing around that money, think about how much they have to be able to toss around that amount of money too, like to just give that up.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But it's like, think of all the good that money could do.
Well, even before when we were talking about I'm like thinking about like, you said 100 million a year. I'm thinking about how much like we're sending Ukraine. I'm like, all this money that's sent all over the place to make the world a better place. How come it hasn't happened?
Question. Or even like right now when we're recording this, Ontario supposedly going into like an education strike. So it's like, yo, couldn't you use some of that little bit of Mormon tithing to like, fund our education system so we don't have to strike anymore? Like stuff like this, right? Yeah. Nothing's going to hospitals, nothing's going to education other than BYU apparently. And nothing's going to like, outreach programs like soup kitchens.
Or not even like missionaries and
women's shelters. And aren't they supposed to be all about the missionary work and all this, right? So it's very odd. And also too, another thing on March 22nd, 2012, Skull and Bones Day, nonetheless. The Mormons cut the ribbon on this big mall in Salt Lake City called City Creek Mall. So it's a huge luxury shopping center right across from their temple in Salt Lake City. So some people, Lars Nielsen, who I mentioned before, his brother was working as an investment manager for the LDS Church and was a whistleblower on this project because he started to realize that the money that people were giving in tithing is being used for commercial developments, not for charitable works, as they state, right?
So they're taking the money that was donated and using it to go buy commercial shit and make money off of it.
Yeah, and make them all, right?
Was it Collier's? Was it owned by Collier's? Was it owned by Collier's? Was it Collier's property? That's Brandon Fugel, actually. That's his property.
I honestly have to look it up.
Yo, you know what's crazy?
So we can find out later.
You know what's crazy too? I don't know if I've actually mentioned it on the show, but that fucker literally owns property that I could walk to blocks away from my house. Brandon Fugel owns fucking property by me.
That's crazy.
Fucking insane. One day I passed it and I was like, yo, isn't that his fucking like property company? I saw like a sign on the side of the building and I looked it up. I was like, fuck this cocksucker.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
So
I don't know, but we'd have to find out after for sure. So yeah, apparently they had an investment fund for this project worth $100 billion. Billion with a B. Which was built on the back of tithing money. So the church ended up making a statement saying, well, yes, we did use money to build the mall, but we used the residual income on the tithing investments, not the investment money itself. Right?
Yeah.
So apparently this makes it okay. And they're investing in stuff like blue chip stocks, like Apple, fossil fuel companies, energy companies. So they're getting the tax breaks. Did you say fossil fuel? Yeah.
Oh shit, they're gonna get canceled now.
Right. Canceled.
Yeah.
They're getting the tax breaks, but not doing what they claim with the money, which is charitable works. So basically you're stealing from your church members.
Yeah, they're using that money to invest in shit to make more money. That is fucking wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty bad. What else was I gonna say?
And you know what? I want to mention real quick too. And I was going to say this near the end, but you gave me a second to just bring this up. And I was afraid at the end maybe people would have already shut the show off. And not that I'm trying to harp on Elon Musk, but he is associated with, Robert Bigelow owned the Skinwalker Ranch. I'm not saying he's a Mormon, but prior to him and after him, Mormons. People who are associated with the stories that came out of Skinwalker Ranch, a lot of them like Junior Hicks and other people, that all have this drawings and, stories about what's going on over there, all Mormon. Mm-hmm. So I don't, Bigelow, I couldn't specifically find that he was, but there was a Bigelow name that was huge in Mormon family from coming overseas, actually. So, I couldn't prove that, but there's a good chance that maybe he's involved with them, possibly. You know,
sounds like a high probability. Right?
This guy makes shuttles and shit to send out to outer space, the moon, supposedly Mars. For $52 million, you can buy a space shuttle from Bigelow that's going to send you to Mars that's powered by Elon Musk's rockets. His rockets are the ones taking you out there, and he's the same one who was saying that we need to populate more. He has come out and said that we don't have an underpopulation. We need more. Sounds very Mormon-esque.
Very, yes.
People need to start looking at that dude and start questioning.
Aren't you supposed to inherit your own planet or something? When you have your celestial wives.
Oh, yeah, if you want to get into that weird shit. Yeah, they think they're in outer space and they came here.
Right.
Yeah.
Apparently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so basically, Lars Nielsen and his brother, they're calling for the IRS to strip the Mormon Church of their charitable tax status, which has not happened, obviously. There was also, upon investigation, a Canadian secret investment fund, similar to the one in America, which was used to invest in companies like Shopify, banks, and energy companies as well. In Canada, the Mormon Church has over $1 billion in assets, including 6 huge ranches, which sprawl over 60,000 acres and are worth around $300 million. Likely, I'm assuming that's in Alberta, because that's where like the Mormon Church seems to be highly concentrated in Canada. And you would find ranches in that part of the country. Yeah, so the church, it claims that most of its money goes to charitable endeavors, but no one, when they look at their books, is seeing this. So it's highly sus, as the kids would say.
That's sus.
Right? And then the people in the investigative piece, they're like, well, it's just crazy how the church has like even duped governments and duped its membership. And I was like, but have they duped governments?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the government knows. Like, you're telling me that the what are they called here? CRA, the Canadian like revenue agency, or like the IRS, like they'll audit a small business owner, but they're not catching this.
Yeah, I was just, as you were saying that, I'm thinking like I've known people who have been audited by the IRS here.
Yeah.
But like, you're not going to audit these people?
Exactly.
Like, go after them. This is a lot more money.
Well, or they don't want to go after them for reasons like, you know, maybe funding the space technology projects, or, you know, the graphene research that they are doing at Skinwalker, and like all this kind of stuff. Maybe they don't want to stop them from collecting their money.
Right. You could hit a different
reason.
You can hit a different religion, different type of religion. Once you hit the Muslims one year, you hit the Catholics another year, you'd get enough money out of them to where you can leave the citizens alone, I'm sure. If you were just to check every other one every few years, I'm sure you'll find discrepancies where you can rack in some money and you can leave us alone.
Totally. And just to compare, like most churches apparently run off of like a $1 to $7 million budget per year. So like there's no need for like this billions and billions, you know? It's very interesting. And it does seem to be like a worldwide problem. So like even people, I just was reading some of the comments under the video on YouTube. Even one girl was saying like her husband's family's from like El Salvador, and the Mormon church there owns like a massive property, like one of the best pieces of real estate there. It's like along a coast. It's beautiful, and it has like high walls. It's very secretive. She's like, no one knows what they do there. It's not like they're doing community outreach or events. It just seems to be like a piece of holding, you know? Like they don't actually do any good with it other than who the heck knows.
That shit weirds me out.
Right?
Because like
super
not to
weird.
sound like doomsday-ish or like really too conspiratorial, but I do highly suggest it. You really should watch it yourself. Oh wait, Handmaid's Tale. Have you? I forgot. Or
I haven't yet.
Oh,
just
but
what
you've seen
told
parts.
Me
yeah,
here and there. Yeah.
I highly suggest people to watch that because it is very Mormon-esque in a sense. But like the thing is, like even watching it, you'll be like, to me, I was thinking, it's like, well, how did you even like? You have an army, you have all these tanks, you have all these weapons. It's like, how does that, like, how do you even acquire that? And then I'm like thinking about like money, even with, you know, the Mormon church. And I'm like, well, with the amount of money that they have, I could see how that shit's attainable.
Totally, right? Even in the part 1 that we did of this, we talked about like the little militias, basically like the families having to like protect themselves. So they've invested in like heavy firearms and like with the Mormons in like Mexico and stuff. Like they are doing that. They probably have very much like a prepper mentality. Well, who knows, bunkers and whatever else they have, right?
Back in the day, we covered it on Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know if people, you know, paid attention or remember, but yeah, back in the day, I think they had about 2,000, maybe it was a little bit more, 2,500 people in their militia. And the United States government came down to tell them, you got to stop your shit with the polygamy and all that crap. They had 6,000 troops, got there, saw how many they had, did not think it was the risk of trying to, you know, do whatever, turned around and went back home.
Look at that, eh?
So the government has already bowed to them once before.
Mm-hmm.
Not to sound crazy or conspiratorial, you know, that out there, but like honestly, they've already said fuck you to them, and they've already said, well, yeah, you got that one. They've already done it before.
Right. That's wild.
Yes.
Yeah.
They got there and they said there's too many of them. Like, you know, this is our whole army.
Yeah. Well, what are we
going to do? Possibly lose half the country's army just because of these sexual freaks? So they just turned around.
Or massacre 6,000 civilians. And how does that look on the government too, right?
Yeah.
If they say that the actual army had like heavier artillery or something, like how does that look? Whatever the outcome, it's not going to be good. Let's just go home.
Yeah. They thought they were going to walk in and just, you know, surround them and be like, you got to stop your shit. And they bow. And they were like, oh, wow, they got a lot of people.
Yeah. They're not going to stop at nothing. That's what I think, you know. I don't know. My mind goes more to like that the government knows and doesn't care and that they actually probably work with them somehow. Also, not to sound too conspiratorial, but that's what I would assume.
Listen, just like wrestling and just like politics, you need the bad guy to keep it interesting.
Totally.
You know, if you don't if you don't have the bad guy, it's not as fun. You know, and it's so much easier to pin it off on the bad guy for why things happen.
It is. Well, and then I'd argue too, you know, that's why we don't hear about it that much in like major media outlets. Because maybe it's just meant to be kept a little bit hush-hush, like all this scandal.
And then be like, oh, my God, where did this all happen? How did this, you know?
Right. Like, why wouldn't the IRS investigate this? Unless they don't want to. Right?
That's what I would have. That would be my hypothesis.
Yeah, that's my conclusion.
Nice. Is that all you had?
Yeah, that's all I got to talk about today.
That's good, though. Wrap that up. And, like, I figured about an hour and a half. That was a solid episode.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. So I mean, in those last 2 episodes, I think we have showed that there's something fishy going on with, you know, sex scandals with these people in this organization, and some funny money going around.
Funny money. That's cute.
So got some. They're like playing around with Monopoly money over here. Some
funny money.
They're doing something with money. I mean, that's even things like people have to remember Joseph Smith was a Mason. But that's even things that we have seen amongst even orders of Masonry. How, like, the inner orders, some will be broke, and then ones that, like, the Loyal Order of the Moose Lodge. Most people are like, what is that? Like, they didn't even know they exist.
Right.
But they had the most money in their fucking accounts out of all the orders that we have covered. And, like, one of my boys who was a Mason, Mark, who was a Mason, he said that, believe it or not, the Moose Lodge and the Elk Lodge has the most members in the Masons because they have alcohol at their lodges. So if you're a Mason, you'll become a member there, so you can go there and hang out, play pool. They have a bar, you know. So, like, it actually, you know, they just become members because of the bar and whatever. Funny. But they were fucking billions of dollars. But then you'd go to the Shriners and they got like a couple of hundred, like million or a couple of million, but it's like the Loyal Order of the Moose has billion. Like, you know, the Shriners, like, people don't even realize half the time that the Shriners are actually Masons, but when people think of the Shriners and don't know they're Masons, they're like, oh, isn't it like those rich guys who ride the small cars? Like, people already associate them with being rich. The lawyer, why do they have less money than, who the fuck's the Loyal Lord of the Moose?
That's wild.
Who John Wayne Gacy was a part of. Yeah, so.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah, just very weird, like how you, like, even we've seen how, like, some orders are broke, but other ones are more, like, by far rich. Are you flipping money around within the order from one order to the next, so it's, you know, kind of playing with taxes?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I just wonder with that, and I think that's what was going on with there. I think that probably it's money laundering or something.
For sure.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a connection, like how many Mormons are also Masons officially. I'd be curious to know that.
I also have to say, too, like, not to get to, like, where I was going with Handmaid's Tale, but it probably would be easier, I would think, to take down the people in your country because they have less guns. So maybe you might need to send more money to the United States.
Maybe. Yes. Oh, that's a good theory. Oh, man. Yeah, because here, what are they going to do with it? Now we can't, there's even new firearm laws here where, like, people can no longer buy firearms. Period.
I know.
Only the criminals will have the guns.
This is why I'm going on. Yeah, this is all these little things.
So they got to funnel it down that way just to shore up, you know?
That this sound crazy, but you never know.
I don't think that sounds very crazy at all.
That's just my commentary and all this stuff that we just covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much doing all that, Teresa. That was it was a great series, and like I had mentioned before in the beginning, we're going to be covering more stuff together, start covering more topics instead of just always guests. Even myself, as you can see, I'm starting to put out like even my own shorts. Like there's plenty of things that I think are interesting to talk about, and I can't do that when I'm constantly having guests on. So I'm going to do what I like, do what I enjoy, and start covering a little bit more topics and a little bit more or less guests. Hope it works out for the listeners and the people watching. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's an okay change for you. If not, I'm sorry, but I like what I'm doing. So, but hopefully it's everybody likes it. You know, I've already been being told now that people are enjoying the shorts. They think it's a small, digestible, easy way to pick up something. So I'm going to keep going with that anyway. But so hopefully this works out. The little bit of a change that I'm doing with my show. Just trying to get more information out there instead of covering a topic that 10 other shows had the same guest on. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know. So, yeah. And like I said, Teresa will be doing more of that with me. She's basically my partner in crime with the NY Patriot show. I got Lux for the Occult Rejects. I got Teresa for this show now. So, and plus, it's a good addition, I think. We work well together, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Teresa, for coming on. Would you like to let everybody know where they can find that amazing podcast of yours?
Yes, our other amazing podcast. Yeah, so you can find me and you, but more of me, I guess, if you want to hear my voice more, on the Spiritual Gangsters podcast. So on all the major platforms and YouTube. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. And you can find me on Instagram as well. That's where I'm the most active. I think it's actually the only social media I have. So it's just my name at Teresa.Cassar.
I really wish you would join Twitter. Well, actually, I would. Twitter sometimes is fun because it's a shit show. Like, that's why I enjoy going on there. But I'd have to say, I think recently Instagram seems to be more of a shit show.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm very comfortable on that for some reason. I did make a Twitter account once upon a time, a long time ago. I don't know, just never got into it, but maybe I will because of the podcast. So there you go.
So her links will be in the bottom as well. Want to remind people, the Element server. Definitely check it out. Great place. Our stuff drops whenever our episodes drop. There's other shows in there. There's massive amounts of people that just dropping plenty of stuff, and it's a good little community. Everybody gets along. Everything's chill. Highly suggest to go check that out. It's safer than Discord. The censorship, they're really, you're basically in our thing, just don't be an asshole to somebody and don't be posting fucked up illegal shit. But
Right.
Really, there's no censorship, and we're trying to kind of keep that going. We're not trying to rule the people either. We're pretty lenient. Just act like an adult and be cool to everybody else. That thing is really awesome. People should check it out. Something I was thinking of doing, maybe once a month, I might go live and have people from the Element server jump on with me in other shows. And do call-ins. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in being able to do, join the Element server. And then when I do these things, I will drop the StreamYard link, and you could jump on the show, and maybe we'll actually try to do topics or something. Who knows? But I have an idea. Yeah, I have an idea that I want to try. I just got to make the time for it. Again, I was even thinking if that idea works out well, it might be a replacement for another show. So I'm not stressing myself. Sorry. That's what I'm going to do. But you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I got to see how it goes. But I think it could be something that could be really cool and fun, especially like if it was once a month, we could give ourselves a month to cover a topic with a bunch of random people. Who knows? But yeah, if you want to be able to jump on and just kick it with us or kick it with me, join the Element server. And that's something that I should be doing going forward, letting people from there jump in and just bullshit for an hour and a half or whatever. It could be fun. Like I said, we'll see where it goes. So check out the Element server, because then you'll be able to do that. Just somehow trying to sell this thing to people. No, I know a lot of people don't want to download another app, but
I wish I was in there more, because I am part of it, but I tend to just not have the time to like check in as much as I want to. But people do drop fire stuff in there.
Oh, for sure.
They really do. It's like they drop great gems, videos, sharing information. So if you're into this kind of stuff, do join it, because you'll find a lot of like-minded people in there.
Yes, like I used to say about our Discord server, it's not because of me and Lux, it was because of the members. That's
exactly. They make it awesome.
Yeah, so same thing with this. It's the members that make it awesome. So yeah, go check it out. The link's in the bottom. I'm sure people probably are watching this on YouTube already, but if you're listening and didn't know, there is a new YouTube. What was it? Torn More came down. We have Rejects and Friends. The link for that is in the bottom as well. So definitely go check that out if you want visuals. We have YouTube, and I have BitChute, and I have Rumble. Rumble I might be ditching, but I'll definitely keep BitChute. So yeah. Again, if this is your first time coming across the show, hit that like and subscribe. Share this, because I know you liked it. I know you enjoyed it. So share it. Pass it on. And you'll definitely like the other stuff that is on this channel. So hit that sub button. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.